Live from the Robinson Auto Group Studios, this is your Wheeling No Two Ways About It with your hosts, Wheeling Mayor Glenn Elliott and Vice Mayor Chad Thalman.
All right, you're listening to Your Wheeling No Two Ways About It here on the Watchdog, 1600 AM, 98.1 FM. I'm Chad Thalman, Vice Mayor of the City of Wheeling, in the studio with co-host Mayor Glenn Elliott. Mayor, how you doing?
I'm doing okay, sir. Doing all right. How about yourself?
Oh, pretty good. Now, Mayor, last night, you went to the dog park. The dog park has recently reopened. You said it was pretty crowded.
It was a sight to behold. The dog park looks amazing. I do have to credit city staff really for it was new sod here about a year and a half ago, so they've been very cautious with it, and we've regulated use to let that sod really grow. But the sod looks great. There's a lot of new wood chips in there. They've done some work around where the water source is there to put some concrete there so it doesn't get as muddy as it was, and it really looks great. And I think the big dog side probably had 30 dogs in there at one point last night when we were there. My dog is about 30-something pounds, so he's a tweener he'd go either way. The big dog side goes to the little dog side, so we took him on both sides last night just to run around a little bit. But it was a great thing to see, and we're very, very happy about it. And I encourage folks to take advantage of it. It's a great community asset.
Yeah, and the City of Wheeling is looking at adding 2 more dog parks to the City of Wheeling. One dog park, we're looking at adding a much smaller dog park in the Warwood neighborhood. We're still kind of looking at locations for that. And I know Councilman Dave Palmer has been thinking about trying to get a dog park added, I think around maybe the skate park or the I-470 ball field, somewhere in that area. I know Councilman Palmer's been working on that. So hopefully later this year, we'll be able to add to the dog park family here in the City of Wheeling.
What Dog Park's bringing is, and I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the Fitzsimmons family for their donations with respect to our featured dog park right now, is a community asset. It's a quality of life feature that, it's hard to put a number value on it, but it really does make us a more attractive city to live in. When you go to a dog park with your dog, you're going to run into people there who, you may not agree on 95% of the things on earth. You may have very different political views, different backgrounds, whatever, but you do have one common view, and that is your love of your dog. If you didn't love your dog, you probably wouldn't be taking the dog park. So it's amazing how people meet each other at dog parks and just, they find that one thing they have in common, and they, have a conversation about it, and it can lead to friendships. Every time we go there, my wife is probably more talkative than I am, but every time we go there, we meet somebody, and, met a lot of folks there. So they're really good sort of neighborhood builders, community builders. They really add to quality of life here, and, I'd like to see maybe some smaller ones in like you mentioned, in the Elm Grove area and Warwood area, because folks in those parts, it's a little bit of a drive to get to the downtown East Wheeling Dog Park. But I think the more dog parks, the better, and I think they really are just a really great community asset. That it may not show up on any GDP numbers or whatever, or jobs or whatever, but it adds something here that makes us more competitive versus every other city in the area that doesn't have a dog park.
Yeah, and off the top of my head, I don't know the closest city that has one. I don't know if Morgantown has one, but I know you got to drive a decent distance from Wheeling to get to the next closest dog park. I'm going to guess Morgantown might have one, but I would think that's probably the closest dog park.
Yeah, so good news on that. So if you have a dog, take advantage of that. A great community asset. It's really, it's a gem.
And on another PSA on the vaccination front, Mayor, I believe anyone over the age of 18 can go up to the Highlands. What is it, Monday to Friday? What's the schedule there?
I don't know the exact hours up there, but we do hear from our folks at Wheeling Hospital that the capacity of vaccine doses they have up there is exceeding the current demand of folks coming in there. So I don't think you need an appointment at this point. If you just want to go up to the old Michael's store in the Highlands during general business hours, at least from 10 to 4, I think. I know the exact hours. They're taking walk-ins right now. We're encouraging all folks to get vaccinated. We had our first shots last week. You had a little bit of a side effect. I didn't have much of an issue. I think our second shots are lined up. But the more people that get vaccinated, the quicker as a community we can get out of the situation that we've been in. And, hopefully there's a date in the future where we can see these masks sort of, not, as part of daily life, but something in the rearview mirror. Something we talk about, remember when we were all wearing masks. But we really can't do that until we get to a point where, I don't know what the term is, herd immunity, whatever, where enough of us are not carrying and transmitting the virus to where it's a public health threat.
Yeah, it wasn't too long ago, maybe a month or two ago, we heard a lot of people kind of upset and frustrated that they wanted to get a vaccine, but they were unable to get scheduled But now we're told they have enough vaccines
Yeah.
that anyone that wants one, go up to the Highlands, go to Michael's. You may want to call the health department first, or I think Wheeling Hospital also has a website that people can log on to and get scheduled. But we're told they have plenty of vaccines, so if anyone wants one here in Ohio County, you can get one.
All right.
Now, Mayor, you had a meeting, I think about a week ago, with Councilwoman Rosemary Ketchum in South Wheeling. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was covered in the newspaper yesterday, but it was last week. It was organized really by Councilman Ketchum and Ken Sexton. He's one of the residents down in South Wheeling, very active in the community down there. And, we had, it was probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, whatever, a shooting down there near the Pulaski Playground. That was like the third shooting incident that's been there in the last couple of years. Residents down there just are really concerned, and I understand their concerns. And so they wanted just to bring it to our attention, ask what we in the police department what we're doing, make sure that South Wheeling is a priority. And sometimes, I've talked to people down in South Wheeling a lot, and sometimes folks feel like it's a forgotten part of the city. I certainly don't think that way, but as I mentioned in the meeting last week, the State Division of Highways, in my opinion, did a big disservice to South Wheeling when they put 470 in the way they did, because it really divides the city right there and creates a sort of a dead man's land between Center Wheeling and South Wheeling down there. And in a lot of places where you've seen that it leads to a disinvestment on both sides of that. I think that never helped the situation there. We've also seen some decline in industry over the years there, but there are a lot of great opportunities in South Wheeling, a lot of great historic buildings. We've seen some uptick in some new construction, Lotus building. Currently, I've done a lot with LaBelle Green. They're working on, I believe they're called Carnegie Greens at 37th and Jacob and 39th and Jacob, 2 new housing development projects. So it's great, going down there and seeing some new projects going up. We've had interest in other buildings. We have some great historic buildings down there. And I think obviously there's a police component to this as well. And, the police and the police chief, maybe we can have them on here in the future to talk about, some of the stuff the police are doing. But the biggest issue, I think, and where you see issue is when you have vacant buildings, when you have dilapidated properties. Those can sometimes harbor criminal activity, and people use those vacant buildings to conduct sort of illicit activities. And that's, where we have to do as best we can do to make sure that, first of all, on the property code enforcement side, we're doing the best we can to make sure that these buildings aren't being used for nefarious purposes, but also that we're holding the property owners accountable, and that we're doing everything we can to get more eyes on the street, more economic development. The more people we have walking the streets in the neighborhoods, the much more the criminals are going to look somewhere else to be. The criminals want to be in places where there aren't a lot of eyes on the streets, and that's why, anytime you have more people living in neighborhoods, it's a great deterrent to crime, because you just have more eyes on the streets. More people like to say, "What's that activity going on there? That doesn't look normal." But if you have no one walking the streets, it's a criminal's dream, and that's an issue. We dealt with the same issue downtown. Downtown 5 or 6 years ago, at 5 o'clock, it'd be pretty lonely down there, and we were seeing a big uptick in foot traffic, and then the pandemic hit, which kind of was a setback. But it still seems like it's better than it was about 5 or 6 years ago. More foot traffic into the evening, and the more that improves, the more criminals do not want to be where there are a lot of people are walking around with eyes and with their cell phone cameras. I mean, criminals want to be where they're out of the eyesight, where they're out of view, and so the more eyes you put on the street, the better. But then the chief also talked about some of the issues that the police department's doing down there as well. They've been fighting just to get fully staffed. I think since we've been in office, they're always playing a catch-up game to keep the department fully staffed. It takes, for an officer to quit, all they have to do is give you a 2-week notice and they can quit. But then to get someone new trained in through the police academy, all that takes months and months and months. And it seems like we're always in that sort of catch-up mode. And, that limits the ability of folks we can put out on the street at any one time. We talked about, efforts to improve that. Obviously, we're building a new police headquarters, which I think will help retention. We also talked about the issue which has been in the media lately on take-home cruisers, which is something that a lot of police officers want, and that's something that council's going to have to talk about here soon. The chief made a very, I thought, astute presentation on that before the council's public safety committee. But the idea behind take-home cruisers is really twofold. One, the cars themselves get treated much better when each officer is assigned one car, as opposed to right now, those cars are used 24/7, and they get treated more or less like a rental car because no one is personally accountable to that car. The second issue is, if they take those cars home at night, that's a police car parked on the street, and police cars have big deterrent values when they parked on streets, even if they're empty. A criminal is more likely to go to the street without a police car on it than one that's on. So, yeah.
And another thing the police chief mentioned is if there's ever some sort of an emergency, and unfortunately we don't have many emergencies in Wheeling where officers are kind of, forced to respond from homes directly to the scene of some sort of incident. But if there's ever an emergency and an officer has a take-home car, they can immediately get in the car, turn the lights and siren on, and respond to whatever that incident is, as opposed to driving their regular car to the police station and then getting in a police car.
And one more thing, I don't want to forget, the chief also mentioned this, and I honestly wasn't aware of this myself, but on the police department's website, for folks who have external security cameras on their properties, you can register those cameras with the police department, and that doesn't give them access to your camera or anything, but what it does is, if there's a crime at, say, 45th and Jacob Street on the corner, and you've already registered your camera, and you're actually located across the street with the camera pointing at that intersection, the police will know, or to go to you and say, hey, can we have access to that camera to see what are this crime? So it's a great way. Board cameras, the price of security cameras, I know this because I bought them for my own buildings downtown, they've really come down here in the last 10 years. You can get HD quality cameras for like $300 or $400, and 8 or 9 cameras or whatever, and they take HD quality, they store like 2 or 3 weeks of data. The price has really come down, and I think the more people who put those on the external properties, just better, and that's something that I wasn't even aware what our police department was doing, so I was glad we got to roll that. I think we put it on the city Facebook page yesterday or the day before as well, but that's something that is a really good way for neighborhoods to kind of help do their part to combat crime as well.
And Mayor, one thing I want to make sure we mention is next week we have a development committee meeting amongst City Council, and a few things are going to be on the agenda, and one thing that we've kind of talked about before, but I just want to remind people this may be coming up, is the City of Wheeling may be expanding the facade program. So the facade program is something that we started, I want to say, maybe in early 2017. And at the time, when we started it up until now, it basically just includes the downtown business district and center of Wheeling. So anyone that owns a commercial property in those areas are eligible for the facade program, and it's basically a matching grant you can get from the city to fix up the outside of your building. It's been a very successful program. We've seen a lot of improvements to downtown buildings and buildings in center of Wheeling as a result of this facade program. We are looking at expanding it to every single neighborhood in the city, so that would be commercial properties throughout the city of Wheeling. That may be something that's going to be taking place, and City Council may be voting on it here in the next several weeks.
Yeah, and that's something you've sort of spearheaded. I know you and I have had a lot of conversations about it. The facade program downtown has been in my opinion, a true success. It's cost the city less than $1 million over 3 or 4 years, and it's led, less than $200,000 in its first 3 or 4 years, and it's led to investments of more than $1 million. Now, some of those investments may have happened whether or not they had a facade program, but it's basically using public money to incentivize private money for being spent. And what you see is when you look at any 1 or 2 streets or blocks or whatever, if one property owner takes advantage of a program like this and fixes up their facade, it creates an incentive for the next property down to say, you know what, well, I mean, I know just did this, I'm going to do this as well. And it really leads to people spending their own money on very important property improvements, which make the city look better. So, we looked at what other cities have done on this. We modeled out our program on the Greenville, South Carolina model, which has been very, very successful. And now I think it's time to look at expanding that, just outside the downtown, but to other parts of the city where, the city could use a little bit of an uptick and look a little bit better. So how we structure that program remains to be determined. I know there's some ideas out there. We have to figure out which buildings qualify, which don't. But that's something we'll have that conversation. We'll start it next week in Development Committee. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and I'm excited about the possibility of expanding this to all the other neighborhoods. Oftentimes we hear people saying that the city only focuses on downtown, but the reality is I think every neighborhood has seen investment over the last 4.5 years by the city of Wheeling, and this is just one more step in that direction. Mayor, the other thing I noticed, I picked up the newspaper, I picked up my phone and read the newspaper, and there's a nice article there on the public market. This is something that was opened, is maybe 2019, I want to say they opened?
18. I think it was 18. Well, it was first proposed in 17, but it's been for about 2 years. Yeah. And so you're looking at me like,
this is something that was controversial, although I don't think it necessarily should have been controversial.
What I've noticed a trend is anytime the city is in the position of being a landlord, and in this case we are and we were, anything that the city does is going to be viewed through a zero-sum lens of you're competing with somebody else. And we've seen this with OVMC, and I'll be the first to admit that we probably could have pitched that story a little bit better back in 2017, 2018, but, it was presented as city to give grow High Valley some sweetheart deal, and it's going to compete with, other local grocery stores. It's going to be
I think
unfair.
the newspaper literally went out and interviewed other local grocery stores and
Yes.
said, how do you feel about this? Yes.
Yeah. What do you think about the city trying to undermine your business model? I think was the catchline of the story. But all that being said, if you look at what that has brought there, first of all, I don't think it's directly competing with anybody. It's sort of its own little niche. And the people who go there, I think they still shop at other stores as well. They go there for specific things that maybe they can't get anywhere else. But it's not a full service grocery store where you can get everything there. It's a place to go to supplement what you get elsewhere. And I think it adds something to our downtown. It adds foot traffic. You walk by there on any given day, and you see people sitting in there and talking, meeting. I think it's an asset to our downtown. I think the folks at Grow High Valley have done a great job with it. And I think it's instructive because I think anytime something new has been announced, it's hard for me to think of something that's not been announced and then been reacted to almost controversially, like it's something new. Even a bank in the Edgewood area was viewed as something new, and well, we don't need any more banks here. We have enough banks in town. And I think we've been so, for so much, this is my theory, and I could be wrong in this. I've said this before on the radio, but I think for so many years, this town and this area, this entire valley has been in a thinking in terms of scarcity. We've seen economic contraction. We've seen the steel mills close down. We've seen coal recede. We've seen natural gas come up and then go down a little bit. And I think we've learned to think of things from a zero-sum position of scarcity, that anything new that's going to be, taking market share is going to be coming at someone else's expense. I don't think that way. I rarely am a rising tide raises all boats a thinker, and I do think we're entering an era of growth right now in this valley, especially here in the city of Wheeling. But sometimes, anything new is viewed from that same position of scarcity, and this is competition. This is not good. This is gonna cost me jobs, or it's gonna hurt my payroll. Or it's gonna hurt my bottom line. I really think, and I say this to restaurant owners too. We've had restaurant owners who may be mad that someone else is moving in the same block, and I think, to me, the best thing for a restaurant, if you have a restaurant, is for another restaurant to open up next door to you, and then one down the street, and then one across the street, and then you have Restaurant Row. I mean, that to me is a much bigger pie. That's the way we have to think about new investments. But everything is viewed almost through the prism of oh, whoa, this is going to hurt so-and-so. And, I don't think that way. Maybe I've been blindsided by some of the pushback we've got. You've seen it lately with Bluefield State as well. But I just don't think that way. If I thought that way, I wouldn't want to be in public office if everything we were doing was from a position of scarcity. I'm looking from a position of growth, and I want to grow this community. I want to stop population decline that's really been occurring since 1938 or 39, last time we actually grew population in Wheeling. And you're not going to get to you're not going to reverse that population loss and grow the economy by thinking in terms of scarcity. Off rant now, off soapbox. I'm done with that topic.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. And we got started on this by talking about the public market. The public market was something that was empty space and basically a city-owned parking garage, and I think it sat empty for at least 5 or 10 years. Grow High Valley came to the city, basically asked if they could rent it. The rent is probably a little bit below market, but it doesn't cost the city anything. The city is actually making money off renting that space as opposed to allowing it to sit empty. And more importantly than that, it's providing a service in downtown Wheeling that previously wasn't there.
Without a doubt, it is not. I don't think it's hurting anybody's business. I've been at some of the other retail grocery stores around town, and they all seem to be doing just fine. If anything, it's just providing another option here. And, competition is not a bad thing. Obviously unfair competition is, and that's something we're always mindful of. If we're entering into any deals with anybody, we don't want it to be an unfair advantage. But I don't think anything that the public market is doing is an unfair advantage, because I think it's just a very different business model what they're doing there. I don't think they're stepping on anybody's toes, and I think they're adding to the menu of options we have here in the city. And more, to me, there's a room for a lot more stuff like that, a lot more sort of niche stores that provide a certain market that's not being captured elsewhere. I think there's a lot of room for it, and so we need to do more of that, not less. But it was a great story today because, you go down to the public market on any given day, and you're going to see folks young and old in there shopping, and it's a place where people gather. It's a place, where people like to be seen, and it adds to what we have in our downtown footprint. And for a space that was vacant for the prior 10 years, I can't think of a better use for it, honestly. Ideally, it would have been a Greyhound station. That's what it was designed to be, but Greyhound didn't want to be there, and the owner of that franchise didn't want to be there.
So I think taking the vacant space that was not contributing in any way for the prior decade and putting it to use like this is about the best we could have hoped for, and I think we hit a home run.
Yeah, and now the city's getting some revenue, the taxpayers are getting some revenue, rent revenue that they otherwise weren't getting. Mayor, we're going to take a short commercial break. When we come back around 12:45, we're going to be joined with Frank O'Brien from the Wheeling, Ohio County Convention and Visitors Bureau. Stay tuned in.
The Metro News Update is brought to you by Thomas Auto Centers, Mall Road, St. Clairsville. Get the best deal at Thomas Auto Centers.
West Virginia Metro News. I'm Chris Lawrence. Figures from the DHHR today show 416 new cases of COVID-19 in the past 24 hours in West Virginia. The daily percent positivity rate 3.64. There are 2 new fatalities reported in the past 24 hours, but the agency also today reveals another 34 deaths that had gone previously unreported, a discrepancy noted in the data match work of the Health Statistics Center. Governor Jim Justice talking more about that as today's figures in his COVID-19 briefing. See it at WVMetroNews.com. Also underway, House and Senate floor sessions. Expect those to be lengthy today as lawmakers try to finish up work on a number of bills. On crossover day, a day the bill must be out of the chamber where it originated to continue on. The Senate has introduced its version of the bill to eliminate the income tax. A third version of such legislation, vastly different from the House plan or the governor's. The Senate version includes significant tax hikes in other areas to cover revenue loss. And Governor Justice does that, but he defends his version.
There's not going to be any need for additional taxes than what I've just said. I have spread it out over a big community, whether it be soft drinks or tobacco or coal or gas or lawyers or whatever.
The Senate plan increases the state sales tax from 6 to 8.5%, reinstates the food tax at 2.5%, creates a sales tax on a number of services and goods now exempt, and anticipates $45 million in revenue from recreational marijuana, which is not yet legal. You're listening to Metro News, the voice of West Virginia. Lawmakers also considering a bill that would put a constitutional amendment on next year's ballot and give the legislature more control over your personal property taxes. Kanawha County Commissioner Ben Salango says that's nothing but a power grab.
They want to make sure that they have, control for many, many years. And then also they want to make sure that they can send out their glossy flyer at election time and say, hey, look what I did. Look at this anti-regulation bill.
From the Metro News Anchor Desk, I'm Chris Lawrence.
1 in 3 adults has prediabetes. 1 in 3. That means it could be you, your football buddy, your football buddy, or you, your best man, your worst man, you, your dog walker, your cat jogger. While 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its Prediabetes Awareness Partners.
Do you have an oak tree in your yard? Well, this sound could be deadly for it this time of year. Oaks all over Ohio are being killed by a fungal disease called oak wilt. It's carried by a bark beetle that just so happens to love freshly cut oak. So certified arborists are reminding people to not prune oak trees during the warm weather unless it's for safety reasons. Find out more by finding an ISA certified arborist near you at trees4ohio.org. That's trees, the number 4, ohio.org.
You've been putting back a few, and a few becomes a few too many. For a moment you think of calling for a ride, but nah, you live nearby. What's the worst that could happen? You get pulled over, your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you total your car, you kill someone. The results of driving drunk are tragic. That's why law enforcement is out there looking for impaired drivers to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again. Drive sober or get pulled over. Paid for by NHTSA.
Hey, I'm going to the kitchen. Can I grab you a Coors Light?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Huh. I never knew there was a zip line in my fridge. Hey, buddy! Yeah! You got 2 Coors Lights up there? You got it!
Always brewed down to 34 degrees. With a taste as cold as the Rockies, only Coors Light gives you refreshment every time.
Here you go, 2 Coors Lights.
Awesome, man. Wow, these are really cold.
That's the only way I deliver it.
Sure, I mean, you being a mountain climber and all?
Yep.
You probably need a pretty warm coat in there, huh?
Yep.
Hey, Ben!
Yeah!
Ask him if he has any nachos.
You got any nachos in there?
No.
Just icy cold Coors Light?
Yep.
That makes sense. It is the Rockies.
Coors Light, the world's most refreshing beer. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. With great beer comes great responsibility.
Your friends, the members of Roofers Union Local 188 in Wheeling, salute our military veterans. Their sacrifices have helped to make America the greatest country to live in. We salute you and honor you, America's real heroes, our veterans. This message from all the great and caring folks, the members of Roofers Union Local 188 of Wheeling, representing licensed, bonded, and insured roofers for residential and commercial projects. That's Roofers Union Local 188.
April 1st, a day for pranks, jokes, and of course, a Nailers hockey game. And Easter egg hunt for kids and adults. Find all the eggs for a chance to win merchandise, gift cards, and a golden egg with 10 free tickets for the West Virginia Lottery Powerball Suite. Sponsored by Generations, Healthy Vibes for You, and Tito Sloppy Dogs. Get tickets for the April 1st Nailers Easter egg hunt at West Banco Arena. Game time 7:10. Call 304-234-GOAL or visit WheelingNailers.com. This is Nail City.
Does your dog need groomed or walked? Are you looking for a pet sitter or dog boarding options? If so, call Dirty Paws, Wheeling's newest pet care service, providing the Ohio Valley with everyone's pet care needs. Check us out on Facebook at Dirty Paws WHG or call 304-639-7754.
Hi, it's Hoppy Kirchville. Join me weekdays at 10 o'clock for Talk Line. We'll talk about the big stories affecting us in West Virginia, top political figures, sports personalities, sometimes just plain folks offering their opinions on what's happening today. 10 till noon, right after the Watchdog Morning Show with Howard Monroe.
Text us or call us with questions or comments. Your Wheeling No Two Ways About It continues on The Watchdog.
All right, you're listening to Your Wheeling, No Two Ways About It, here on the Watchdog, 1600 AM, 98.1 FM. I'm Chad Thalman, Vice Mayor of the City of Wheeling, in the studio with co-host Mayor Glenn Elliott, and we've just been joined by Frank O'Brien, the Director of the Wheeling, Ohio County Convention and Visitors Bureau. Frank?
Hello, gentlemen. How are you today?
Thanks for joining us. Frank, we wanted to have you on and kind of talk about how things, how you've seen the pandemic impact things around Wheeling and around Ohio County and what you expect going forward.
I can tell you that 1 year ago in March, when the mandates indicated that in April we were going to shut down the entire world for 15 days, the impact on tourism was immediate. Many of the hotel properties, some actually even just closed. So the economic impact on tourism, visitation, destinations, absolutely was hit to the point where, just for example, revenues declined by as much as 80%. So there were only a few hotels that actually operated during the pandemic, and Ogilvy was one of them. And that's going to be a bright spot, I'll tell you, as far as our recovery. But it was a year that I'd like to forget.
I think we all would agree with you on that one.
And we were.
Well, I got married in 2020. I can't forget that if you're listening, dude.
Well,
That's my wife.
you didn't mean that.
Yeah, I didn't mean that. Yeah,
well, it's an emotional event. That one is. But yeah, 2020 is it really skews everything up. That's not right. Skew. You know what I mean? It messes things up. Because 2019 was a banner year for Wheeling and Ohio County as far as visitation. The numbers were strong. The economic impact is strong. And believe it or not, we average about 3.8 to 4 million people a year come to Ohio County, whether it's for destination retail like Cabela's or Center Market. The casino draws a big number of people. Ogilvy brings in 1.5 million people. And so when you add that all up, we've got a pretty good tax base, a good direct impact as far as spending base. But then, once we had to close the Capitol Theater a year ago, and it went dark, these are defensible numbers. If we get about 50,000 people that sit in the seats of the theater during the course of a year, the economic impact on Wheeling and Ohio County is $3 to $5 million. Tuesday nights, for example, when there's a Broadway show in town, and you can go to the Bridge Tavern and River City, and most restaurants far and wide are filled with people that are going to that show. So that way, it's easier to measure the impact of what a theater does. but let's get back to that's pretty negative. And the theater remains closed. Denny Magruder and the Sports and Entertainment Authority, which is the city commission that runs both the arena and the theater, are working on seating plans and various ways of getting people comfortable. But, as long as we're doing the social distancing, how are you going to get people to sit by people that they don't know yet? So it just doesn't make a lot of sense. But it's been a year now, so we are getting really used to some of the requirements of the pandemic, some of the safety things that make people comfortable as far as visiting. And the Festival of Lights turned out to be really a bright spot in 2020. In November and December, you can actually see the economic impact increase caused by people lining up to go to the Festival of Lights, which obviously that's probably the safest thing you can do with your family in a pandemic is be in your car. But those folks also spent a night in Wheeling, not only at Ogilvy, but at the Hampton Inns and at the Highlands and on National Road. All of these properties actually benefit because of that. In fact, about 85,000 people spent at least one night in Wheeling in November and December of 2020. When you look at the overall picture, last year was a down year for visitation. There were 267,000 people that spent a night in Wheeling. 85,000 of those people were here in November and December, which is directly related from what we can tell because of the lights. So they were actually keeping us on the map during 2020.
Now, Frank, where do you see the future of the theater in West Bank Arena? Do you think they're going to be open, this summer, or is it going to be the fall, or when do you think we're going to see shows back at the theater again?
I know that there's going to be a lot more activity outdoors. Heritage Port, and that'll be a good place for the return of some of these events. Waterfront Wednesdays and Movie Fridays, I see all of that coming back, which is going to generate some safe standards, and people will feel more comfortable getting back into the groove. It's good. That's going to be the toughest thing that we have to overcome. The Wheeling Nailers have done a good job demonstrating that the arena can safely accommodate, a couple of thousand fans if they have to. The MEC tournament, which was there, was obviously scaled down, but we were still able to meet the health and safety requirements. So I look forward to maybe the rodeo coming back. But once again, 8,000 people sign up to go to the rodeo, so they're going to have to, limit the amount of ticket sales. Capitol Theater, the good news is it's still, even though it's dark, the heat's on, there are people in the building, and they're keeping it up to the point where when we do open for a show, it'll be, the doors will open wide and everyone will be pleased with what they're seeing there. But as far as a date, Chad, I'm not really sure when that could be. Poor Trace Atkins, he's had to reschedule 5 or 6 different times for his show in Wheeling, but it's going to come back. I know that they're talking to the Broadway people, and there may be instead of coming in January, they may come in the summer or late fall, which would change things around. But once we get open again, once people find out that it's safe, people get their vaccinations, do all of that, I think Wheeling's going to have some great opportunity in 21. I absolutely no doubt in my mind that people have pent up emotions. They want to get out.
Oh, yes.
And they're going to hit.
Especially with it being spring right now. It's a compounding factor. People, I know a lot of people who for the last year have almost gone nowhere. They have fully become homebodies, and sometimes for their own health and safety, but you reach a point where you just have to get out. And what I worry is people just overreact and just, jump off and, sort of forget all the steps and washing their hands and the mask and other stuff. But we will reach a point at some point with vaccinations. I think our state's done a pretty good job on this compared to some other states. I know a lot of folks, just are resisting, even though it's available to them, they're not getting it. And because they read somewhere, saw somewhere on TV that it's a risk, a danger, or they,
I've seen people who've had COVID, and that's a risk.
Yeah.
You know, I have people in my family who've had it and who struggle with it. You know, I've not heard anything about the vaccine that's anything close to what I've seen personally. And so if folks are out there sort of wavering, I mean, this is a time you got to assess the risks out there. And COVID is a nasty bug, especially if you have what's called comorbidities or whatever. I'm not a health expert, but I know it's, you know, once you end up on a ventilator, it's usually a one-way trip sometimes, and a lot of folks don't get off those things. So, you know, I think the more people that get the vaccination, as a community, we'll reach a point where we can start doing live entertainment like that. And I know live music is now back, at least on a smaller basis.
Right.
And personally, I'm just looking forward to that. I can't remember last time I saw live music. And I mean, there's something about seeing music live. And the other thing the theater provides in particular is just driving down Main Street with the marquee all lit up and the lights on. It feels like it's a city that's alive.
Oh, I agree
and,
with
you
you.
know, I'm not just there, but the theater next to me, it's only open 1 or 2 nights a month or whatever, but the Victoria Theater, when its marquee is lit up and the lights are on, I mean, Market Street feels entirely different.
It does.
You know, theaters are something that just, it's where all wired to want to go and see live events. And as a community, you know, we're working through how to do it safely now. But I know it's been a tough year for you, but I think you've done a great job just sort of managing things in this situation. Are you following downstate in terms of what the guidelines are going to be in terms of crowd sizes here anytime soon? Or
it was my understanding that we were at 100%. Am I?
I'm not sure.
I thought it was 100%. However, some venues are still, you know, practicing more caution than that. But you're right about the live music. That was the thing we were waiting for. So now, theoretically, we could open the theater as long as we do them seating arrangements.
I think the question, though, you were suggesting earlier, though, is, I mean, are there a lot of folks who would come, except for the fact that they're worried about the COVID situation? So, obviously, folks who are back. Now, I'm not suggesting this under any stretch, but I saw someone posted on social media a picture of an event somewhere where it had separate seating sections for vaccinated and non-vaccinated people. Now, I think that's getting a little bit of sort of big brother-ish, and I have issues with that. But is that something that's conceivable down the road where folks could feel a little higher degree of safety if they're in the vaccinated section if they could prove they got vaccinated? Is that an idea? I'm not suggesting it.
It reminds me of, and it wasn't that long ago, maybe 20 years ago, the smoking and non-smoking sections.
Oh, yeah.
You walk into a restaurant in Wheeling, Yeah,
well, everywhere. Yeah, I remember airplanes. I'm old enough to have flown on airplanes where you could smoke on the airplane, and there were smoking sections on airplanes. So,
in fact, they had the ashtrays right in the arms.
So, which is hard to believe, but I'm sorry.
Now, Frank, a lot of your budget, pretty much all your budget, I believe, comes from hotel motel tax.
It does.
What have you seen? I mean, what did COVID do to your budget with less people? I would assume, at least in the beginning, a year ago, less people traveling.
Oh yeah, absolutely. In fact, there were mandates in West Virginia from the governor to stay at home. Don't go anywhere unless you have to go, you know, for emergencies. But so that was an immediate impact on hospitality, and people were not coming. And even though a couple were open, like Ogilvy stayed open for medical staff and frontline people to help them out, but most of them closed. And so our economic impact, we lost 90% of our revenue in March and April. The good news is recovery is already underway in a big way. But we're still, you know, we lost, when it was all said and done, we lost 50% of our revenue for the 2020. So that required us to cut back on some things, put in the back burner some projects for the theater until we can get the recovery mode. And I think that in a short amount of time, we're going to be back. It's going to take about 2 years, 3 years before people travel the way they used to. But I think people are ready to go very soon.
Now, Frank, you just mentioned the theater. What kind of projects going forward over the next few years would you guys like to do at the theater? What kind of remodeling and other things do you think need to be done there?
One of the things that we have to do first before we do anything is replace the fly system. Now, the fly system on the stage is when you see different backdrops and different scenery drop from the ceiling and then go back up, that's the fly system. And the theater's fly system was installed in 1927, so it doesn't meet today's weight codes. It doesn't meet the strength that it needs to support today's shows. And sadly enough, when a Broadway show comes to Wheeling, because of our antiquated fly system, you're only seeing about 65% of the backdrops that you would see if you were at another venue. Wow. So this is a quality of show thing. Quite frankly, some production companies don't want to come until it gets fixed. So it's all been designed. We've had steel experts in looking at it. So it's just a matter of time. It's a pretty expensive project. And through the help of the preservation fund that the theater has at the Ohio Valley Foundation and different CVB revenues, perhaps it can be done. We've also applied, or in the process of that shuttered venue American Rescue Act that's out there. The theater was shuttered for a year, and so very easily lost about $1 million that could have been reinvested back into the theater from ticket fees. That money's gone, and so that's really going to hinder our ability to move these projects forward. So yeah, we got some big dreams, and we're trying, and we're part of a group that's trying to access the skills of a company based in DC. So yeah, hopefully good things will happen for us.
Frank, we've talked about this on the radio before, but I mean, for folks who may have missed that show, it was probably 3 or 4 years ago. There was a time when the future of the theater was anything but certain, and this predates our involvement on city council by 8 years or so. But what can you tell us about to me, the decision of so many different, the city and other groups to come together, the CVB, really had it all to come together back then. This was 08 or 07 or 08, or I don't know what it was, and Save That Theater is one of the best examples of a public-private partnership. Really doing something that's a civic and a community good, and which I think is done nothing but kind of redound to our benefit. What can you tell us about the history of that project and how close did that theater come to being gone?
You're absolutely right. Yeah. In 2006, the theater closed, and so the CBB did an economic impact in December of 2006, and we lost $1 million in revenue for the community. So it made sense that without the theater as a separate venue to go to, in addition to going to the Festival of Lights, things like that, the negative impact would have been forever. It was closed for 3 years, and its previous owner did a lot of money out, but not very little money back in. So it was in violation of all kinds of fire and safety codes. Yeah. It didn't have a sprinkler system, didn't have smoke detectors, didn't have an adequate fire escape. So there were a lot of things that had to be addressed immediately. But we used to meet, this group that you're talking about, private and public, we'd meet at Ogilvy at 7 o'clock in the morning and sit around at a table and try to figure out how can we save such an important icon for the city. And initially we were going to do a private partnership. The CVB was going to commit $1 million of future revenue to support whoever bought it. Well, nobody stepped forward to buy it. And so that commitment of $1 million basically was just sitting there. So ultimately we said, well, why doesn't the CVB buy it and own it and operate it as a community asset for the city and the county forevermore? And that was what we did. And so we borrowed close to $2 million, and I'm proud to say that we had a 10-year payback window. Last year in July, we paid everything off. So the theater is free and clear for the community. And as far as I can tell, will always be a positive asset. Absolutely. And it's never going to be owned by a corporation whose goal is taking money out. It's going to be putting it back in. And the CVB doesn't have a profit motive for the theater. We just want it to sustain itself. And it has done that thanks to the Sports and Entertainment Authority. Those are good people for that.
Now, Frank, assuming that the pandemic eases tomorrow and people feel comfortable coming back to the theater, it still takes, I would assume, months to book acts and stuff like that. So when do you anticipate that you'll be able to start booking, and when would those acts actually show up, and when would people able to to see those acts at the theater?
Actually, Vice Mayor, I'm not part of that process. I think there was a Josh who works for the operations of the theater. He may have been here, and Lola might have a better time on that than I do. I'm primarily interested in the mortgage payments, keeping the place in business, but Danny Magruder, who's been there for 35 years, is in communication with these folks, and so he would have a better handle. I do know, for example, that there is going to be, doesn't involve the theater, but does involve a draw to the Ohio County area. The sports and entertainment complex at the Highlands, the county made the right decision to hire a professional management firm to run that venue. And as a result, even with this pandemic, more than 29 events have been scheduled. Coming up in April, several thousand wrestlers are going to come from all over the tri-state. And we were able to get that tournament. It's a Under Armour tournament in Wheeling in Ohio County, away from Cincinnati.
Wow.
So we can compete, and so we were involved in that. So that's our good plan B. That's going to bring people into the Wheeling area. They're going to primarily go to the Highlands, but they're also going to want to know what's going on everywhere else. And so we have access to all of those properties, all the hotels, and because we're partners with the complex, we have information and access to their data. So people can go to Center Market. People that are watching their kids play all day are looking for some adult entertainment. So the casino is just a couple of miles down the road. So we think all of these things are going to be a multi-faceted tourism driver for us. So the theater is going to be back, but the sports complex is kind of taking up some of the slack.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because I think, I know you think like this, Frank. I think there are a lot of folks who see everything new as almost as infringing on something else. And I know the history with the city and the Highlands is one of where there's some jealousies and whatever. I can tell you without any doubt right now that mindset is gone, at least on city council, and it seems to be gone on the county commission as well. I think we are in a mindset of how can we work together? I don't see the Highlands as competition. I see it as supplementing the experience for people living in Wheeling. I now serve on the Ohio County Development Authority Board, and I want to see them thrive up there, and I want to see them actually grow the pie. And I know that's the way you think because we've had this conversation before, and I think they can supplement a lot of what we have here. At the same time, I think there's a need for, a lot of folks, sort of crave that downtown look and feel and authenticity. You just can't make with new architecture or whatever, and that's something we have to sort of make a focus here, and the Capitol Theater is a big piece of what we offer here, but to supplement that with what we have the Highlands, I look at it as one big pot here where, we're trying to just grow it for everybody, and there are other assets too, outside the city that still help the city actually be more competitive, so.
And real quickly, the CBB Board of Directors is made up of both folks from the Ohio County Highlands area as well as the city and Ogilvy and the casino. So we were able to share that marketing, that database. So everybody can benefit. So thanks for letting me on today.
Absolutely, Frank. We got a couple minutes left. Anything else, Mr. Vice Mayor, that you had on your...
Man, I don't have anything else. I don't know if you want to talk about, what's going on in Charleston. That seems to be a theme that you have the last few weeks to talk about.
I'm not going to rant too much, but I will say, because there was a story in the newspaper today, and Frank, if you have any comments, you're welcome to chime in as well, on the Senate version of the governor's income tax phase-out proposal. And... Well, first of all, this is being billed as a tax cut, and, I get it. I guess it's going to be slight reduction in revenues, but this is really a tax shift is the way to think about this. All it's doing is replacing one form of raising taxes with other forms, multiple forms. And the thing that just concerns me is, because we're a city which, Ohio, literally, if you could kick a football, you could probably get a football to Ohio from where we are right now. And 10 minutes in normal times with 70 open, you could get to Pennsylvania. If you take the sales tax to what they're talking about, 8.5%, you throw in the additional 1% that a lot of cities, including Wheeling, have, that's a 9.5% sales tax. I worry what that does to a retail footprint. And I think if I'm the Highlands, it's a bigger concern because I think they're, compared to the city with me, they are disproportionately reliant on retail. Pennsylvania already has the 0% sales tax on clothing. So, if you're Cabela's, it's a big disincentive for me for folks to shop at our stores here locally, and I worry about the impact of that. I love the idea of trying to be more competitive. I certainly think the governor's plan is intended to make the state more competitive, but I worry that it's in the right direction. Frank, do you want to say that?
I'm with you, Mayor. I've been following everything is through now, and I agree.
Well, hey, time goes fast when you're having fun here. Thanks for joining us, Frank O'Brien, Executive Director of the Wheeling CDB. Vice Mayor Fallon, another good week here, another week for your Wheeling No Two Ways About It in the books. We'll see you next time on The Watchdog.